In today's video, I'll talk about a type 2 diabetes meal plan to reverse diabetes. I'll explain what causes type 2 diabetes and how to reverse it. This type 2 diabetes meal plan involves following a healthy low-carb keto diet and intermittent fasting. Why low carbohydrate diet? Because it's been shown over and over again to be the most effective diet for reducing blood glucose and insulin, reducing insulin resistance, and reversing type 2 diabetes. You can find references in the description of this video. Now, what do I mean by reversing type 2 diabetes? Can you reverse type 2 diabetes? The answer is yes. Some people call it diabetes remission. Some people call it diabetes reversal. For a very long time, it was believed that type 2 diabetes is a progressive, irreversible disease caused by our genetics. You have diabetes genes, that's it. There's nothing you can do. We now have a lot of evidence showing that even if we do have diabetes genes or we have diabetes running in our family, like I have, that doesn't mean that we will get type 2 diabetes. That only means that we have a greater risk of developing type 2 diabetes if we follow a certain type of lifestyle that involves consuming high amounts of carbohydrates. To activate these diabetes genes, we must follow a high carbohydrate diet. There are some other blood glucose triggers. However, eating carbs is the number one, the most important blood glucose trigger. Carbs break down into sugar in our bodies. If we remove or greatly reduce carbs, we don't express our diabetes genes. In type 2 diabetes, epigenetic factors such as our diet are way more important than our genes. And there's another part of type 2 diabetes. We have elevated blood glucose and we have chronically elevated insulin that leads to insulin resistance. This comes before blood glucose gets elevated. What are the biggest insulin triggers? High carbohydrate diet, frequent eating, and overeating. When people say overeating causes insulin resistance, I ask, but what causes overeating? Looking at overeating as a cause is not deep enough. There are many underlying triggers of overeating. Things like eating processed foods that are engineered to make you overeat. When you see a food label with 30 different ingredients, it's not there for no reason. It's there to make foods more addictive, more attractive, suppress the satiety, and make you eat more. Things like MSG or monosodium glutamate, E621. And there are various other flavor enhancers, sweeteners, texture enhancers. There are whole food scientist teams working hard to make you crave and make you overeat so that you would buy more. So we have this and then one more very important trigger of overeating: eating a lot of carbohydrates. From all macronutrients, carbs are the least satiating. Following a high carbohydrate meal, hunger returns much sooner. Carbs, especially refined carbs, make you eat until you're physically stuffed. You would think that eating carbs will make you eat less calories than eating fat. Fat has 9 calories per gram, while carbs have only 4 calories per gram. But what happens when we compare two groups of people eating either higher fat, calorie-dense foods with people eating less calorie-dense, higher carb foods? You notice that people eating more carbs and less fat end up eating way more calories. That's because most high-carb foods, especially high refined carb foods, are the least satiating. So before saying that overeating causes insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, we have to look at what foods are these people overeating on. And there are other factors that make things worse. Things like being sedentary, as it makes you less insulin sensitive, or eating junk food, eating foods that are full of toxins, harmful food additives, as it messes with your hormones and makes you overeat. These foods prevent your body from functioning the way it should. Another factor, too much stress, because it leads to elevated cortisol, which then leads to elevated glucose. As well, taking medication that causes insulin resistance. As you can imagine, it's a complicated multifactorial disease with more than one possible cause. However, I see it over and over again that people who snack all the time and eat a lot of carbohydrates are the ones who get type 2 diabetes. Another interesting fact: in what people group we see the most type 2 diabetes cases? in low-income people. Why? Because they often can't afford buying more nutrient-dense foods, things like meat, fish, eggs, nuts, seeds, and vegetables, foods that keep your blood glucose and insulin nice and low. This leads to them being more likely to base their diets on the cheapest food ingredients, foods like bread, pasta, rice, and other grains or grain products. And then people on a low income receive support from the government. More bread, pasta, rice, sugar, and potatoes. So I'm not surprised that people on a low income are more at risk for developing diabetes. According to this report from Diabetes UK, the poorest people in the UK are 2.5 times more likely to have diabetes compared to an average person. And we can see the same being true when you compare the wealthiest and the poorest countries. It's not that all people on a low income have type 2 diabetes genes. It's clearly the difference in the diet which leads to more type 2 diabetes cases. So what would a type 2 diabetes meal plan to reverse diabetes involve? Removing the foods that trigger either high glucose or high insulin. This includes foods like pasta, bread, potatoes, rice, and any types of grains or grain products, or high starch or high sugar foods. When we think about unhealthy high-carb foods, we tend to focus on sugar. Almost everyone knows that sugar is unhealthy. But when it comes to starch, a lot of people don't know that it's unhealthy. So what is starch? It is simply a lot of sugar molecules packed together. Foods like brown rice or wholemeal bread might be better than refined carbs, foods like white rice or white bread. But when it comes to their insulin response, they are just as bad. Remember, type 2 diabetes starts from too much insulin. Foods like whole grains will cause high insulin response. The higher the percentage, the more insulin. Another important step for reversing your type 2 diabetes is eating less frequently. If you're having 6 small meals a day, it's time to rethink this. Each time we eat, we elevate insulin. If we eat the whole day, we never have low insulin. Why should we keep our insulin low? Because low insulin allows us to access our stored body fat and use it as energy. We're not designed to have food available all the time and eat every 2 or 3 hours. This breaks our metabolism and makes us unhealthy. Having less meals and bigger gaps between those meals allows us to be healthy and fit. It is very important to increase the nutrient density by replacing unhealthy empty calorie foods by high nutrient foods. You need more healthy fat, the right amount and the right type of protein, and plenty of non-starchy vegetables. You need healthy prebiotics and probiotics. So these are the most important factors for reversing type 2 diabetes. Now, if you want the exact meal plan that you can follow, that shows you what to eat, from breakfast to dinner, that is created for reversing type 2 diabetes, you can check the link in the top right corner of this video and also in the description of this video. I created a 14-day meal plan for type 2 diabetics that focuses on lowering blood glucose and insulin, reducing insulin resistance, and reversing type 2 diabetes in the long term. This type 2 diabetes meal plan combines the nutrient-dense low-carb keto diet and intermittent fasting. The meals are quick, easy, nutrient-dense, and delicious. I have a low-carb keto meal plan for type 2 diabetics and a vegetarian low-carb keto meal plan for type 2 diabetics. You can find the links in the description. I hope you found this video useful and learned something new. Feel free to share it with your friends and family. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.